Roman Adler slammed the gull-wing door of his matte black Aston Martin shut and stared at the glossy dealership in front of him, annoyed he'd let his assistant talk him into this. "You need to get out of your penthouse and breathe," she'd said. "Go test drive something that doesn't have a boardroom or bottom line attached to it." So here he was, Billionaire, CEO of Adler Global, and a man who could buy half the city standing under the California sun, about to test a sports car he could already buy 10 of. He hated wasting time. But then the glass doors slid open and she walked out. Her name tag said Valencia Johnson, and she walked like she had better things to do than sell dream cars to bored billionaires. "Mr. Adler," she said, stopping in front of him, her heels clicking lightly on the pavement. Her voice was confident but not fake. "You're here to test the Draken V12. Roman blinked. She wasn't the usual type they threw at him, no over-the-top makeup, no breathy tone. She wore a simple navy blouse tucked into black slacks, her thick dark hair twisted up in a clip. And her eyes hazel, sharp, like she saw right through him. "I am," he said, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're the one taking me out," she gave a half shrug, unlocking the car behind her. "Unless you prefer a brochure." He let out a short laugh, surprised by it. "Let's see how it handles." The Draken was a beast twin-turbo engine, hand-stitched leather, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, but Roman barely noticed. His focus had shifted entirely to the woman in the passenger seat, calmly walking him through specs while casually challenging every smug comment he threw her way. "So, what do you actually do, Valencia?" he asked, turning onto the winding canyon road. Besides memorizing engine stats, she looked out the window, unfazed. "I grew up rebuilding classic cars with my dad, got a mechanical engineering degree, but I've got bills and this job pays better than being elbow-deep in carburetors." Roman raised a brow. "You're not like the others here." "I know," she said, glancing at him. "That's why you're still listening." He grinned despite himself. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't impressed, and that made her the most interesting person he'd met in months. They drove for over an hour. She let him push the car to the edge but never lost her cool, and when he nearly missed a turn, she grabbed the wheel with quick hands and said, "Don't wreck it until you buy it." Back at the dealership, Roman didn't get out right away. "You want the car?" Valencia asked, unclipping her seatbelt. "I want dinner," he said bluntly, watching her reaction. "With you," she looked at him deadpan. "You're serious." "I'm always serious." Valencia tilted her head. "You're used to women saying yes the second you ask, aren't you?" "Pretty much," she smiled, but not the kind that gave in. "Then maybe it's time someone said no." Roman leaned back in the seat, surprised again. "You're not saying no." "No," she said, opening the door. "I'm saying not yet." He watched her walk away, the sun bouncing off her hair. For the first time in a long while, Roman Adler felt something stir that had nothing to do with money or power. Later that night, he called his assistant. "Find out everything you can about Valencia Johnson," he said. "You like the car that much?" she asked. Roman looked out over the city from his penthouse window. "No," he said quietly. "I liked the woman who didn't care that I could buy it." The next day, he showed up again. Valencia raised her eyebrows when she saw him standing by the same car. "Didn't you already test drive it?" "I thought I'd give it another shot," Roman said, tossing her the keys. "But this time you drive." She hesitated, then caught the keys mid-air. "You sure you can handle being in the passenger seat?" he grinned. "I'll risk it if it means I get to see you smile again." Valencia rolled her eyes but got in. They drove through the hills, music low, the wind catching strands of her hair. Somewhere along the way, Roman couldn't stop watching her hands on the wheel. "You're really not going to flirt back?" he asked. "I don't date customers," she said. "What if I buy the dealership?" Valencia laughed for the first time. "Then I'd quit." Roman turned toward her, serious now. "What if I told you I haven't been this interested in someone in years?" She didn't answer right away. Then she pulled over, cut the engine, and turned to face him. "You don't know me." "Then let me." She studied him. "Why me? You're not impressed by me. That's your pitch." "No," he said. "That's what makes you real." She looked back at the view. "I don't do casual. I don't do games. I don't either." Valencia looked at him like she was trying to decide if he was bluffing. "Dinner," she said finally. 1. "And if you show up late, talk about yourself the whole time or act like you own the world, I'm out." Roman smiled. Deal. That Friday, he picked her up in a different car, vintage, polished, understated. He wore a dark suit, no tie. She wore a black dress with sleeves and boots, no heels. When they stepped into the rooftop restaurant, the host nearly tripped over himself. "You rented the whole place," she whispered. Roman leaned closer. Didn't want to talk over anyone else. Dinner was slow, easy. Valencia told him about her mom's diner, her first car, the time she rebuilt an engine in the middle of a thunderstorm. Roman told her things he hadn't said out loud in years about his father's death, the pressure of running an empire, the loneliness that came with it all. By dessert, neither of them wanted the night to end. Outside, in the cool night air, Roman hesitated. "I don't want this to be the end of it," he said. Valencia looked up at him. "Then don't let it be." He stepped closer. "Can I kiss you? You can try." He kissed her slow, like he had all the time in the world, and when she kissed him back, Roman knew one thing for certain: this wasn't about the car anymore. He was falling. Fast. Valencia didn't expect him to call. That was the unspoken rule of men like Roman Adler. If they got what they wanted, they disappeared. But 4 days later, he showed up at the diner in East Larchmont, where her mother had worked brunch shifts every Sunday for the last 15 years. He didn't walk in wearing one of those tailored suits or step out of an exotic import. He wore jeans, a gray Henley, and an expression that said he'd driven across the city just to see her. "You followed me here?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel behind the counter. "I asked your mom if the pancakes were as good as you said. She told me to sit down and stop blocking the door." Valencia poured a coffee and set it in front of him. "You're lucky she didn't hand you a mop." She tried. "I told her I didn't pass the health inspection." Her mother glanced up from the griddle and called out, "He's not wrong. He's got that clean hands but no calluses look." Roman gave a single nod, then met Valencia's eyes again. "I wanted to see where you're really from." She narrowed her gaze. "And why would a man with a skyline view of Los Angeles care about that?" "Because I've only ever known people who build towers. You're someone who builds engines and pancakes." She crossed her arms. "You don't need to understand me, Roman. This isn't your world." "I want to understand it," he said quietly. "I want to understand you." Valencia opened her mouth, but her mother interrupted, sliding a plate across the counter. "Sit, eat, or get out of my booth." Roman obeyed. Later that afternoon, he asked her to take a walk. They went 3 blocks down to an old warehouse with a faded sign that read Larchmont Auto and Salvage. She pulled open the side door and motioned him in. Inside, the air smelled like oil and dust. An old Mustang sat stripped to the chassis. Tools hung from the walls in perfect order. She tossed him a pair of gloves and opened a toolbox. "You want to understand me," she said. "Start with a socket wrench." Roman looked at the car. "You're rebuilding that." "My dad left it to me. He ran this place until the cancer took him." Said the Mustang was the only thing in his life that ever came back after breaking down. Roman didn't touch the wrench. "Why haven't you finished it?" "I told myself I would when life calmed down." She looked at him. But life never does. He stared at her hands, small but capable, stained faintly from engine grease that never quite washed away. "Let me help." She handed him a rag. "Start by wiping those shoes." "I don't need your $500 soles tracking in brake fluid." He crouched beside her, and for the next hour, they worked in silence, her tightening bolts, him handing her parts. The only sound was the occasional clink of metal and the creak of the old rolling stool. When she finally stood and stretched her arms, he asked, "Do you ever miss it?" "Miss what?" "Doing something for yourself, not because it pays, not because someone expects it, just because it feels right." Valencia leaned against the workbench, brushing her hair off her forehead. "The only thing I miss is breathing without watching the clock." Roman straightened, wiping his hands. "What if I gave you time?" She frowned. "That's not something you can buy." "I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about space. Freedom. I know someone who owns a private garage in Echo Park. Fully stocked, classic cars, no clients, no bosses, just tools and time. And you'd just hand me the keys. I'd lease them." He paused. "To someone I trust." She eyed him. "You don't know me well enough to trust me." "I know you well enough to know I want to." Valencia grabbed a cloth and started cleaning up. "You think offering me a quiet garage is going to make me fall for you?" "No," Roman said, stepping closer. But I think it might make you see that I'm not just here to chase something I can't have. I'm here because when I'm around you, I feel like I'm not performing." She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "And what exactly are you performing the rest of the time?" He hesitated. "Being the man everyone expects me to be, the one who always wins, always controls, always walks away first." Valencia held his gaze. "Then maybe it's time you stopped acting." Roman reached for her hand, tracing his thumb along the small scar on her knuckle. "How'd you get this?" he asked. "Dropped a carburetor on it when I was 16, he smiled. "You're the only woman I've ever met who makes that sound like a rite of passage." She slowly pulled her hand back. "Don't idealize me, Roman. I'm not some puzzle you get to solve so you can feel real for 5 minutes. I don't think you're a puzzle, I think you're the answer." She turned away, her jaw tightening. "You say all the right things." "I'm not trying to be right," he said. "I'm trying to be honest." A long silence stretched between them, thick with things neither of them wanted to say out loud. Finally, Valencia spoke. "If I took you up on that garage, it wouldn't be for you. It'd be for me. That's exactly what I want." She studied him, eyes flickering with something unreadable. "Don't give me something you'll take away when this gets inconvenient." "I've never done anything inconvenient in my life," Roman said. "Until you," she didn't respond. Just walked to the door and held it open. "Go home, Roman." He paused at the threshold. "Will you call me if you decide?" "I won't decide," she said. "I'll build." That night, Roman didn't go back to his penthouse. He drove to the edge of the city, parked by the water, and sat on the hood of his car, replaying their conversation over and over. He hadn't just found someone different, he'd found someone who made him question everything he thought he wanted. And that terrified him more than any hostile takeover ever could. The garage in Echo Park was quiet when Valencia stepped inside for the first time. Roman had left the keys with a note, no grand message, just an address and a date. No expectations either. That was the only reason she came. She ran her fingers along the edge of the aluminum work table, eyes scanning the pristine layout rows of polished wrenches, lifts that rose with the push of a button, a fresh set of coveralls folded neatly near the locker. A 1966 Camaro SS sat under a canvas wrap in the center bay, its curves catching the light even through the dust. She didn't call him. She just picked up a socket wrench and started working. By the third week, she'd rebuilt the suspension and reassembled the transmission. Roman hadn't shown up or asked anything, but every Friday, a small box would appear outside the door. Once it was a set of vintage chrome handles. The next week, a limited edition steering wheel wrapped in Italian leather. Then a bottle of hand lotion, unscented, with a note that simply read, "For the knuckles." On the fourth Friday, she found him inside. "You broke into your own garage?" she asked, tossing her gloves on the bench. "I never left," he said, stepping away from the Camaro. "I've been upstairs." "I didn't know there was an upstairs. There's a loft. I thought you might throw a wrench at me if I interrupted your rhythm." She raised an eyebrow. "And yet here you are." "I brought lunch," he said, holding up a brown paper bag. "Not catered." "I made it. You cook now." He opened the bag and pulled out 2 sandwiches, wrapped in foil, and 2 bottled teas. "Badly, but I figured you'd be more impressed by effort than presentation." She took one and sat on the floor beside the car. "If this has mayonnaise, we're done." "It doesn't," he said, settling across from her. "I asked someone what mechanics eat." "Mechanics eat whatever's closest to the carburetor." They ate in silence for a while, the sound of passing traffic faint through the corrugated walls. "You're different here," he said finally. Valencia glanced at him. "You mean I'm not pushing you away?" "No, you're grounded, like nothing can touch you." She folded the foil and set it aside. "This is the one place I don't owe anyone anything." Roman leaned back on his hands. "Is that what you think I want from you? That you owe me something?" "I don't know what you want. That's what makes me nervous." "I want to be around you," he said. "Not because you make me feel important, but because you make me feel present." She let that sit between them for a long moment. "You ever think about walking away from all of it, my company? Everything, the boardrooms, the suits, the headlines, just leaving it all behind?" Roman looked toward the high window where the sun streaked across the concrete floor. "Sometimes, but then I remember I built it from nothing. Walking away would feel like erasing who I became to survive. But who did you become? She asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Someone who forgot what it was like to fall asleep without checking his phone. Valencia exhaled slowly. You're a complicated man, Roman Adler. I'm just a man trying to figure out who he is when no one's watching. She stood, brushing crumbs off her jeans. I don't need you to figure it out for me. I know, he said. But I want to earn the right to stand next to you while you figure yourself out. Her eyes softened for the first time since he arrived. That's not a right most people get. I'm not most people. She tilted her head. You always this persistent, only when it matters. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was full. Like something was shifting between them in the space of a breath. He stood and stepped closer, not too close. I don't want to be a distraction from your life, Valencia. I want to be a part of it. She looked up at him, her gaze steady. Then you need to see all of it. Show me. She pulled a keyring from her pocket and tossed it to him. The Mustang. Back in Larchmont. If you're serious about earning something, you'll be there tomorrow at 6 a.m. To help me finish it. Roman caught the keys easily. I'll be there. And wear something you're not afraid to ruin. I'll burn it when we're done. The next morning, when she pulled up to the auto shop in her truck, Roman was already parked out front, sleeves rolled, grease on his forearm. He was balancing a box of brake pads on one shoulder, talking to a wiry teenager who looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. This is Milo, Roman said as she approached. He wants to learn. I figured you could use an assistant. She shot him a look. You're recruiting interns now. He was sleeping behind the garage, said he used to help his uncle fix bikes. Valencia turned to Milo and held out a pair of gloves. You want to learn, Milo, he nodded, eyes wide. Then let's get to work. They sank into the rhythm quickly, Roman handing tools, Milo fetching parts, Valencia directing with sharp precision. By noon, the engine was mounted and humming. By sunset, the car was ready to move. Roman wiped his hands on a rag. You want to do the honors, Valencia looked at him, then at the Mustang. We all do it together. They pushed it out into the lot, Roman behind the wheel. When the engine roared to life, Milo whooped and Valencia just stood there, arms crossed, a quiet pride tugging at her lips. Roman climbed out, walked over, and stood in front of her. You're not just capable, you're unstoppable, she met his gaze. You still sure you want to be part of this life? Roman didn't hesitate. I've never been more sure of anything. She nodded once, her voice low. Then don't run when it gets messy. I'm not going anywhere. And in that moment, Valencia believed him, not because of his promises or the way he looked at her, but because for the first time in her life, someone had shown up, stayed, and asked for nothing in return. Valencia hadn't intended to let Roman into her world this deeply. But he'd earned it not with money, not with gestures, but with consistent presence. And now, as she stood in the middle of her father's rebuilt Mustang garage, watching Roman help Milo organize the tool wall like it was second nature, she realized something quietly terrifying. She'd let him in. Fully. You're unusually quiet, Roman said, wiping his hands and coming to stand beside her. That usually means something's brewing in your head. She glanced at him. I'm just taking inventory. Of what? Of how fast this all changed. Roman leaned against the bench beside her, not touching her, not pushing, just present. You think it's too fast? He asked carefully. I think I've never let someone get this close without finding a reason to push them away. Roman stayed quiet, letting the weight of her words settle. I don't want to lose myself in someone else's world, she added, eyes fixed on the garage floor. Then let's build one that belongs to both of us, Roman said. Not mine, not yours, ours. She turned, cautiously studying his face. That sounds good in theory, then real life shows up. Real life's already here. He folded his arms. I've got an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning because my CFO tried to greenlight an acquisition I vetoed 2 weeks ago. My inbox has over 200 unread messages, and I still haven't responded to the mayor's office about that charity gala next weekend. Valencia raised a brow. And you're here instead. I'm here because none of it means anything if I don't have someone real to come home to. Her voice softened. You're not just saying that to keep me around. Roman's tone was steady. If I were trying to keep you, I'd be offering you stock options and a car. I'm standing here, covered in grease, because I want a life with you in it. Before she could answer, Milo poked his head around the corner. The guy from the lots outside says he's got a tow truck for the Mustang. Valencia frowned. I didn't schedule a pickup. Roman straightened. I might have made a call. She followed him outside where a sleek enclosed trailer sat at the curb. The driver handed her a clipboard and stepped back without a word. On the side of the trailer in small, brushed steel lettering were the words, Johnson Adler Restoration Project. She blinked. What is this? Roman handed her a simple folded envelope. Inside was a deed transfer and a lease agreement both naming her as the sole owner of the Echo Park garage. I don't need you to work for someone else ever again, he said. This place, the tools, the space, it's yours. No strings, her throat tightened. Roman, I can't accept this, it's too much. It's not a gift, he said. It's an investment in you, in what you're building, in us. She stepped back, heart thudding. I told you I don't want to be owned. You won't be, he said. Not by me, not by anyone. But I've spent years buying things that never mattered. This matters. Valencia stared at the trailer, the name, the possibilities. Then she looked back at him, not the billionaire, not the CEO, but the man who had shown up, day after day, without demanding anything in return. I have conditions, she said. Roman gave a nod. Name them. 1, I run the shop my way, no interference, no branding. Done. 2, Milo works with me, paid. On the books, absolutely. And 3, she said, stepping close enough for her voice to lower, if we do this, really do this, you don't get to disappear when things get hard. Roman's voice was low but certain. I don't run when it's hard, I run when there's nothing worth staying for, this. That's worth staying. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached for his hand. Then let's build something real. 3 days later, at the gala Roman had nearly blown off, he stood beside her on the rooftop of the downtown art museum, wearing a midnight black suit she'd picked out herself. Valencia wore a deep bronze dress with structured shoulders and a clean, modern line, something understated but striking. She tied her hair back, letting a few loose strands frame her jaw. People watched them. Whispered. Wondered who she was. Roman didn't care. He held her hand in full view of the city's elite, introduced her as his partner not just in name, but in every sense of the word. When one of the board members made a condescending remark about her career pivot, Roman shut it down with a simple, lethal smile. She runs her own shop, he said. And she's the reason I'm not losing my mind right now. Later in the evening, standing near the rooftop edge with the skyline stretching behind them, Valencia leaned against the railing. You ever think about how none of this was planned? She asked. All the best things aren't, he replied. I walked into that dealership expecting to waste an hour. Instead, I found the one person who refuses to let me buy her. She glanced sideways. Still planning to drive that Draken. I already ordered a second one, he said, for the garage. Thought we could take it apart and see if it's worth the hype. She laughed. You're a strange man, Roman Adler. He stepped behind her, arms sliding around her waist. Maybe, but I'm yours. She turned in his arms, eyes locked on his. Then prove it. He pulled her closer, voice low. Marry me. The words hit like a gear shift mid-race, her breath caught. Are you serious? I've never been more serious about anything. We've already built something together. Let's finish the rest of it. She didn't answer right away. Just looked at him, really looked into the eyes of the man who had walked into her life with a sports car and no clue what he was about to find. And then she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Let's do it. 1 month later, in a quiet ceremony overlooking the canyon road where they first drove together, Valencia walked barefoot down a garden path in a simple ivory dress. Roman stood waiting. No crowd, no press, just them, Milo, her mother, and a justice of the peace. There were no vows written in advance, just promises spoken from the heart. I didn't expect you, Roman said, voice unsteady, but you're exactly what I needed. Valencia took his hand. I didn't want forever until I met you. They kissed beneath hanging lights and a sky full of stars. And when the Mustang rolled up at the end of the night, engine purring, they drove off together, no destination set, just a road ahead and 2 people who had chosen each other completely. A billionaire, a mechanic, and a love neither of them saw coming. 3 months after the wedding, the garage bustled with more energy than ever. A low hum of music played from a vintage radio. Valencia had restored herself. while Milo adjusted the timing on a cherry-red Chevelle under her direction. The shop had gained attention. Almost overnight word spread fast when a billionaire backed a mechanic with a sharp eye and a sharper mind. Valencia stood at the back of the garage, clipboard in hand, going over the parts inventory. Roman stood across from her, leaning casually against the work table, sleeves rolled, a grease stain on his jaw that he hadn't noticed yet. He wasn't there to watch, he was there to work. He'd taken to rebuilding an old Ducati in the evenings, his hands learning the language of torque wrenches and piston rings under her guidance. "Your intake manifold's still sitting in the wrong bin," Valencia said without looking up. Roman didn't move. "Are you sure?" "Because I distinctly remember placing it next to the exhaust headers, alphabetically." She snapped the clipboard closed and turned to him. "Roman. You put it next to the brake calipers. I was testing you. No, you were distracted by the dog Milo brought in and forgot what you were doing." He grinned, brushing the back of his hand across his jaw absently, smearing the grease further. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for a three-legged mutt with a guilty conscience." Valencia crossed the room, reached up, and wiped the grease from his jaw with her thumb. "You're a sucker for anything that looks at you like you own the moon." He tilted his head. "So that includes you." She paused, then gave a short laugh. "Nice try." He caught her wrist gently, eyes serious now. "You're the one thing I've never needed to convince myself I deserve." She looked at him for a long moment, then broke the silence with a dry, "That almost made up for the fact that you mislabeled the entire bolt drawer." He dropped her hand and groaned. "That was one time, twice. I said I'd fix it. You said that 2 weeks ago. I've been busy." She arched a brow. "Doing what? Staring at that Ducati like it's going to assemble itself?" Roman leaned in, voice dropping. "Waiting for you to stop pretending you don't like having me around." Valencia's smile was soft now, the one she reserved just for him. "If I didn't like having you around, I wouldn't let you touch my torque wrenches. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." She kissed him lightly, then pulled away before he could deepen it. "Don't get distracted. You still have to finish that rebuild if you want to ride with me next weekend." He sighed dramatically and headed back to his stall. "You sure you weren't born to boss around billionaires? Only the ones who think they know where the valve cover gasket goes." Milo rolled out from under the Chevelle, grinning. "She's right, you know." Roman pointed a wrench at him. "Whose side are you on? The one that doesn't confuse steel bolts with aluminum?" The garage door rolled open with a rush of warm air. Valencia's mother stepped inside, holding a pastry box and a thermos. "I brought coffee and that cinnamon braid you like," she said, setting them on the bench. Valencia hugged her. "You didn't have to." Her mother gave Roman a look. "He's still behaving." Roman saluted with a wrench. "I haven't bought a dealership in 3 months. Progress," her mother said dryly. "Maybe next you'll learn how to brew coffee that doesn't taste like burnt pennies." He held a hand to his chest in mock offense. "I'm being bullied in my own investment." "It's not yours anymore," Valencia reminded him. "You gave it to me." He tilted his head. "Best return on investment I've ever made." Later that night, the three of them sat on the shop's rooftop patio, string lights glowing overhead. Milo tossed a tennis ball to the dog, who promptly ignored it and curled up beside Valencia instead. Roman poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to her. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked. She looked at the stars. "Not really. I spent so long surviving the now, I forgot how to picture the future." "Well," he said, taking a sip, "I've been thinking, that's dangerous. I want to build more shops, not franchises, not chains, but places like this, where people who don't get second chances can learn something real." Milo's not the only one out there with talent and no direction. She turned to him, surprised. "You're serious?" "I'm always serious when it comes to you. And yeah, I want to pour money into this, but not just because I can, because it matters." She studied him. "You'd walk away from Adler Global." "I'd step aside," he said. "Put someone in who knows the market but doesn't forget the people. I've spent a decade making everyone richer. I want to spend the next one making something real." Valencia leaned her head against his shoulder. "I don't need you to change the world." "I know," he said softly, "but you made me want to." She stayed quiet for a while, the night quiet but full of promise. "I've been thinking too," she said eventually. "About the Mustang, I don't want it to just sit in a showroom or garage. I want to take it on the road, maybe cross-country, together," he asked. "Yeah," she said, smiling. "You and me, a map, no destination, just the open road." Roman clinked his glass gently against hers. Name the day. A year later, they stood in front of a restored train station in Colorado, where Valencia had just given a speech to a group of young women starting their first apprenticeships in the new Johnson Adler restoration program. Behind them, the Mustang gleamed, its engine rebuilt 3 times purely for the joy of it. Milo now ran his own corner of the Echo Park garage, and the Ducati sat in a display case Roman had built himself, a reminder that even billionaires could learn how to rebuild something with their bare hands. They traveled often, sometimes on 2 wheels, sometimes behind the wheel of a car older than both of them. They didn't chase headlines or city lights anymore. They chased sunrises, winding roads, and the quiet joy of shared purpose. And every night, wherever they landed, Roman would pull her close and say the same 6 words, "I'm still here, still choosing you." And Valencia would always answer the same way. "Then we're exactly where we're meant to be."